Mr. Speaker, it causes a continuation and a further decline in our democracy, and we'll continue to fight it. Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for that debate for now. Now I'll go to statement by members and déclaration de député. The honourable member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor to rise in the House today to recognize the career of Peter Stirrup, head of school at Pickering College. Peter began teaching at Pickering College in 1986 and has served as head of school since 1995. A remarkable 27 years of achievement, leadership, education, and excellence. Founded in 1842, Pickering College is an independent day and boarding school for boys and girls from JK to grade 12. Recognized in 2020 with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Canadian Accredited Independent Schools, Peter's impact on excellence in education and leadership has truly traveled around the world. Peter, as you reflect on all that you've accomplished as the head of Pickering College, I hope you do so with the knowledge that you have made the Pickering College community greater, better, and more beautiful than how you found it. Enjoy your retirement, Peter.
Very good.
The honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to Michael Wilton, who tragically passed away in a plane crash on April 22nd. He was a pilot, an entrepreneur, adventurer, proud father of two twin boys. He often introduced them as his junior sales associates. I got to know Mike over the imposition of the new and unfair tax on small aircraft. He was an entrepreneur who refurbished planes, creating aerospace jobs in Calgary. He loved flying. I mean, he really loved flying. We had long phone calls and exchanged many emails over his work. He was quickly becoming a policy advocate for aircraft enthusiasts. He even appeared at the Standing Committee on Finance to defend this sector. Mike leaves behind his partner, Kelly Beckstrand, his twin sons, Thomas James Wilton and William Scott Wilton. To his family, friends, business colleagues, we join you in your grief and sorrow. A pilot's prayer goes like this, that he shall know the joy they feel who ride thy realms on birds of steel. Rest in peace, Mike.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great sadness that I share the passing of Dr. David Barber, distinguished professor at the University of Manitoba. As founding director of the Centre for Earth Observation Science and Canada Research Chair in Arctic System Science and Climate Change, David established the U of M as a global leader in Arctic research. His tireless work has helped to place Canada at the forefront of Arctic research and created opportunity for innumerable students, professors, and research staff to better understand the rapidly changing Arctic and its impacts on people and diverse habitats. His dedication helped secure major Arctic research infrastructure, including the Canadian Research Icebreaker, CCGS Amundsen, and the Churchill Marine Observatory. On behalf of this House, Mr. Speaker, I extend my heartfelt condolences to his wife, Lucette, and his three children, Jeremy, Julian, Jamie, as well as his step-grandson, Ryden, and grandson, Luca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, that doesn't count as part of my time. Mr. Speaker, let's not forget them. The workers, men and women who lose their lives at work, too many of them in Quebec. Alone, there were 207 victims last year. Parents, brothers, sisters, friends, and colleagues who died at work. On behalf of the Bloc, I wish to extend my sincere condolences on this day of mourning. Those who've been injured or killed in work, at work, on behalf of them, I would invite all of us to think about places that are more dangerous to work in than here in the House. The risk of death or injury or sickness. We can think of the thousands of people who caught COVID in long-term care. So let's just remember in a nonpartisan way that health and safety in the workplace should be one of our top priorities.
The honourable member for Kanata Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, it's Infertility Awareness Week here in Canada, a time to normalize and destigmatize the conversation about infertility. Many Canadians face challenges on their path to parenthood. In fact, Mr. Speaker, 1 in 6 Canadians experience infertility. It can affect anyone, irrespective of age or gender. And for many who are struggling to conceive, it is often a hidden and emotionally devastating struggle. Infertility Awareness Week helps Canadians break the silence by having open, honest conversations about infertility. It lets others who are experiencing infertility know that they are not alone and they should not be ashamed. To Canadians struggling with infertility, please know that you are not alone, and talking about your struggles may help you, but it may also help others who are struggling alone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have lost control over their lives, whether they've lost their jobs because of a medical decision or whether it's the single mother who can't afford food for her children because of inflation, whether it's a 32-year-old who living in his mother's basement because of real estate inflation, people who can't pay their bills because this government is making the cost of living too high. The more the government spends, the more Canadians have to pay, the more expensive just living gets for Canadians. Taxes increase the cost of goods and services, and the inflation deficit increases the cost of each and every product. Mr. Speaker, let's stop inflation. Let's lower taxes. Let's give Canadians back power over their lives and not just give it to bankers. Let's make Canada the freest country in the world, and give Canadians control back over their own lives. Thank you.
The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Well, thank you, Speaker. Today I address this House to remember a dear friend, an active member in the Toronto Liberal community, Carol Wardell, who suddenly passed away earlier this month. Carol was the type of person who radiated warmth and a friendliness the moment you met her. She was an admired teacher and vice principal for many years, and she's someone who always had a welcoming smile on her face. As an active member for decades on both our provincial and federal riding associations in Don Valley East, she was a staple at almost every local event, election campaign, and fundraiser, always to be the first one to volunteer and to help out. She was also a longtime member of the Willowdale Women's Liberal Club. There, she spent a lot of time creating space for women in politics and working to encourage more women to get involved in politics. Carol will be remembered by myself and so many other people whose lives she's touched, and for her advocacy, her generosity, and most of all, her exceptionally kind spirit. On behalf of the Don Valley's community, thank you, Carol, for all you've given over the course of your lifetime.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a pleasure to rise today to commemorate the first graduates of the University of Victoria's Indigenous Law program. These 23 trailblazers are graduating with a joint degree in Canadian common law and Indigenous legal orders. In highlighting the accomplishments of these incredible students, I want to acknowledge Jolene Ashini from the Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation, who is the first Labrador Innu woman to earn a law degree. Jolene was drawn to the study of law through her late father's work as a leader within the Innu Nation. She noted that this program was something she needed because it was tailored to her idea of Indigenous justice and advancing culturally significant law. We are proud of Jolene and her 22 colleagues on being the first Indigenous law graduates from the University of Victoria. We look forward to seeing how their courage, their expertise, and education will advance reconciliation and create a stronger Canada for all of us.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you. Summer sandstorms have been wreaking havoc in the town of Windsor, Nova Scotia, due to the dried up Avon River mudflat. The destructive sandstorms are not just an annoyance, they pose serious health threats to residents. The dry pond has also reduced summer activities on the Avon River, like canoeing, kayaking, swimming, and stopped the important Pumpkin Festival lake race. This is having a severe impact on tourism in Windsor after 2 years of reduced visitor numbers. The sandstorms are a result of a ministerial order that is renewed every 2 weeks by the Minister of Fisheries that allows the head of the pond to sit dry. In an ideal world, the minister will amend this order to restore the river and lake, but at least she can do is to amend it and keep the riverbed moist enough to stop the sandstorms. The Minister of Fisheries can do everything in the town of everyone in the town of Windsor a favor by amending the order and fixing the Avon River issue.
The honourable member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend, after a 2-year hiatus, it was my privilege to attend the Royal Canadian Legion Branch No. 6 in Cloverdale's annual awards ceremony. The branch, home to 1,314 members, presented many awards, including years of service from 10 years to 55 years. Legion members continue to support our veterans and community despite the difficulty of the pandemic. During my visit, I presented Dolly Greenside with the Palm Leaf to the Meritorious Service Award, the highest award for the Legion Ladies Auxiliary. Dolly, at the tender age of 94 years, has been a member of the Legion Ladies Auxiliary for 63 years. I was proud to present Dolly with this honor, and I'm proud to call her my friend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, Wendake is in the heart of my riding and is surrounded by Quebec City. But can you imagine that according to Canada Post, Wendake is identified by its postal code as being an isolated region far from urban centres? As a result, businesses and individuals who have goods delivered to them pay more because of this postal code, even though it doesn't reflect the geographic reality at all. The situation is true here in Wendake, but also in many other Indigenous communities near urban centres. This has to change. This is systemic racism, and it directly undermines the economic development of our communities. The situation is as ridiculous as it is unfair. I invite the government to act promptly and effectively by taking concrete and necessary steps to identify postal codes based on geography, not the community being served. It's a matter of common sense, but above all, it's a question of respect.
For Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Finally, after years of delay, Canada is one step closer today to the long-standing and discriminatory blood ban being lifted in this country. It's been a long time coming. The pain, the stigma, and the frustration that many gay, bi, and trans men have felt in this country for too many years has not been fair. While today's news is welcome news, it did not need to take this long. I've been proud to stand in this House calling on the government to show some urgency in actually ending this. We are still at least 5 months away from this change taking effect. This after knowing the recommendation was coming over a year ago. Mr. Speaker, there is still leadership that can be shown to have this easy and simple and safe change be made sooner. Discrimination like this should not take this long to resolve. We will keep the battle up, Mr. Speaker. But today I want to thank the many voices that pressured this government to finally act. The All Blood is Equal campaign, and particularly men who have felt this stigma firsthand, myself included. After years of your advocacy, change is finally coming. Long-standing discrimination is finally ending when it comes to the blood ban.
Good job, Eric. Good job.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, it's an awesome feeling to speak today to commemorate and celebrate the 350th anniversary of Ile Perrot in my community of Vaudreuil-Soulanges. It's a historic event that dates back almost 2 centuries before the founding of Canada. It's indeed a very special celebration with over 50 activities that wouldn't have been made possible without the vision and dedication of men and women who care deeply about their island. I'm talking about Lise Chartier, Marie-Jacinthe Roberge, Olga Cassetta, Charles-Olivier Belle-Rose Bélanger, Daniel Bertolini, Bertolino, Catherine Champagne, Sébastien Davio, Laurier Farmer, Louise Lapointe, and Vicky Sauvé. Of course, I'd also like to thank the mayors of the 4 towns on Perrot Island, Pierre Séguin, Danny Deschênes, Claude Comeau, and Michel Boudreau, who worked hard to put forward this incredible event.
Our community of Vaudreuil-Soulanges to come together to celebrate the rich history of our beautiful island and to wish Île Perrot a happy 350th.
The honourable member for Hamilton Centre.
Today, on the National Day of Mourning for workers killed or injured on the job, we mourn all workers who have lost their lives and recommit to fight like hell for the living. Just 2 days ago, a worker at Janko Steel in Stony Creek died in an industrial accident. Our thoughts are with his family and everybody impacted by this horrible and preventable tragedy. Working class people continue to be sacrificed for the greeds and profits of capitalism, and COVID has made things worse. Whether it's in long-term care homes, construction and industrial sites, meatpacking plants, far too many workers continue to be killed and injured on the job, yet corporate executives keep cashing in. Every employer must be held accountable for their negligence. The Westray law was introduced to hold companies criminally accountable for worker safety, but only one person has ever gone to jail. This is appalling. Kill a worker, go to jail. We must continue to fight to improve the health and safety conditions for workers because every worker deserves to get home safe at the end of the day.
The Deputy de Drummond.
The honourable member for Drummond. There were thousands of them in the freight cars. There were thousands of them, and that was a poem by Jean Ferrand. In memory of the Shoah, we remember what people are prepared to do to humanity. We remember the evil that happens when evil triumphs. And we also remember solidarity, resistance, resilience, the ability to survive despite the darkness, despite the terror. These always prevail. And we remember that memory will allow us, can avoid us, to avoid the errors of the past. And because we remember, we also look at the world sometimes in anger and sometimes in fear. We will remember those women and men and children who were victims of hatred. We remember our sacred task to fight that hatred. We remember that we are not immune, especially if we forget. In underscoring the Shoah, we remember.
The honourable member for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, as a Jewish Canadian, I join Jewish communities and others in Canada and around the world to observe Yom HaShoah. On Yom HaShoah, we remember the 6 million innocent Jews who were systematically murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust, one of the darkest periods in human history. We also pay tribute to those who survived these unspeakable atrocities and recognize the bravery of all who stood against the Nazi regime, risking their lives to save others. By telling the stories of the Holocaust, we make sure these experiences of loss and survival, of unspeakable suffering and profound resilience are never forgotten. Sadly, acts of anti-Semitic violence are still frequent today, and it is our solemn duty to stand united and vigilant against all forms of anti-Semitism, hatred, and discrimination. We must be clear, attacks against the Jewish community are attacks against all of us. We have a shared responsibility to continue to pay tribute to the victims of the Holocaust and ensure that their stories continue to resonate with generations to come. Together, let us all vow, never again.
And the honourable member for York Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last night around the world, Jewish communities began to mark from sunset to sunset Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day. This morning at 10 a.m. in Israel, air raid sirens sounded throughout the country. An entire nation, the Jewish people, stop their day-to-day lives at the moment of these sirens, a collective cry, a moment to reflect, to listen, and remember. On this day, 6 million of our people live in all of our hearts. Today, we are the eyes that remember. Today, we are their voice. Today, we cry for them, for what was lost in their murder at the hands of the Nazi regime. We cry for their memory. I was honored to join the Prime Minister and colleagues from across this House, thank you, this morning, standing with the Jewish community at the National Holocaust Memorial to honor and remember the men, women, children whose lives have been lost forever. We stand together as the Jewish community with our country here in Canada to say clearly and resolutely, never again. Mr. Speaker, in every generation, it is our duty, our obligation to honor the victims of the Holocaust, to learn from this tragic moment in humanity, to ensure that the words never again are both a focus of remembrance and a reminder to never be complacent in the face of evil, to be relentless in our efforts to fight back against the darkness of hate. Lighting a flame of remembrance today is to shine a light into all of our hearts, to protect those who are in crisis, then, now, and always. Yehi zichram baruch. May their memories be a blessing.
I thank everyone for their great statements. Oral questions. Question orale. L'honorable député de Meg.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Emergency Measures Act is so exceptional that it requires the government to justify its use to prevent abuses of citizens' rights. An investigation into the government's actions must be held. I said an investigation into the government's actions. Analysts and civil rights groups have stated it clearly. The executive order giving this mandate to Judge Rouleau asks him to investigate citizens, rather. So the Liberal government is writing the report's findings even before the investigation begins. Why? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, illegal blockades of critical corridors and the occupation of Ottawa were hurting our economy and endangering public safety. Our government was cautious, but we understood that we were responsible for protecting the Canadian economy and for protecting Canadians. We are looking forward to receiving Judge Rouleau's report. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, neither the Minister of Justice nor the Minister of Public Safety is able to justify the use of the Act. They are taking refuge behind Cabinet confidence. Once again, we are seeing a concerted effort in all of Cabinet to protect who? The Prime Minister, who once again is playing political games on the backs of citizens. With the complicity of the NDP, they themselves set up the roles of the committee to analyze the government's decisions. They removed Commissioner Rouleau from the very specific mandate under the Act. Why? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government's measures were appropriate. They were targeted and ended as soon as possible. It is our duty to protect Canadians and the Canadian economy. We met that obligation, which is a central responsibility of any federal government. And we are looking forward to receiving Justice Rouleau's report. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, just like with the We Charity scandal, with the Jody Wilson-Raybould scandal, like with the secret documents from the Winnipeg Laboratory, well, here again, we're seeing a camouflage operation starting again. The Prime Minister received an illegal gift, and the RCMP was even thinking about laying criminal fraud charges against the PM. He has admitted that he did not receive permission from anyone to break the law. So will the Minister of Justice support our new request for an RCMP investigation? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. The opposition is talking about something that happened in 2016, more than 6 years ago. The Ethics Commissioner investigated the matter in depth and published a report, and that was in 2017. Our government believes that Canadians are now facing some much more urgent challenges.
Kirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals need to understand we're talking about the RCMP investigation into fraud against the government by the Prime Minister, not the Ethics Commissioner study. The Prime Minister thinks he's above the law and there's the rest of us on another piece of law. He accepted a $215,000 luxury private island vacation from someone who is actively lobbying the government for millions of taxpayer money. The Prime Minister provided the missing piece of the puzzle the RCMP needed to charge him. He admitted he did not have permission to take the trip. The RCMP has all the puzzles they need now to charge the Prime Minister with committing fraud against the government. Will the Prime Minister cooperate with that investigation?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. The opposition is talking about something which took place in 2016, more than 6 years ago. This matter has been thoroughly investigated by the Ethics Commissioner, who published a report in 2017. Our government absolutely understands that Canadians want and need us to focus on more pressing challenges: affordability, climate change, housing, and of course Putin's illegal war in Ukraine.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister cannot dodge these questions much longer. We've got to remember, there is no statute of limitations under the criminal code here in Canada. In fact, the Prime Minister's silence sounds a lot like an admission of guilt. In the RCMP criminal brief, they said, if the Prime Minister was any other Canadian, he would be charged. Canadians are demanding the Prime Minister be held to a higher standard. Will the Prime Minister lift the veil of secrecy, clear the air, and proactively speak to the RCMP?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what I hear Canadians demanding. Canadians are demanding action on climate change. Canadians are demanding action to build more houses for a growing country. Canadians are demanding that our country act urgently to support Ukraine and to oppose Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Those are the urgent issues facing Canada today, and that's what our government is focused on.
L'honorable député de la Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the Chamber required that the government appear before committee to cast light on the concerning firing of Winnipeg scientists. But instead of obeying the House, the Liberals are using their deal with the NDP to create their own committee and their own rules and their own report with their own conclusions. And all of that without getting the agreement of the two main opposition parties. This is not democratic or transparent. Does this government realize that its union with the NDP does not authorize it to create a parallel parliament with its own rules? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in December, we presented a proposal that offers a reasonable solution. The ad hoc group of members that we proposed, in collaboration with a group of 3 former justices, would have access to non-redacted documents related to the Winnipeg laboratory matter. We will work with the NDP to create the committee, yes. But we have communicated with the Bloc Québécois, and we would be very pleased to have them join us on the committee. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, no members here have an interest in compromising national security, but no citizen has an interest in having its government actions hidden. You couldn't make this story up, Mr. Speaker. In June, the Liberals took issue with your own office in order to avoid having to unveil the documents. And today, instead of showing them to elected officials at committee, this government wants to create its own committee with NDP assistance. Is this a banana republic or what? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, MPs are responsible for doing their work on behalf of the Canadians they represent, including on matters of public interest. At the same time, the government has the obligation to protect Canadians from the harms that could result if some information, such as details linked to national security, became public. We will work with the NDP to create the committee, but we would also be very pleased to work with the Bloc Québécois. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers' choice is clear. They want public universal pharmacare. 73% of people polled in Quebec are in favor of such a plan. This is a crushing majority. Why? Because they know that they're paying too much for their medication, and the cost is just going up. They know that pharmacare would lower these costs and improve their health. For Quebecers and Canadians, the question is not how, but when this will be done. Will the government take action and find a solution? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, no one should have to choose between paying for their prescription medication and putting food on the table. That's why last August we announced an agreement with PEI in order to take some of the first steps to implement a universal pharmacare plan. This is an important first step, but there is still a great deal of work to do, and we will do that work.
Member for Hamilton Centre.
Today on the National Day of Mourning, we remember those we've lost and those who have suffered life-changing workplace injuries. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government is planning to end the sickness benefit program on May 7th. Federal workers won't have any support if they're sick and need to stay home. While we fought to secure 10 paid sick days to protect federal workers, the Liberals are choosing to delay this important protection for Canadians. So, Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government follow through and finally deliver on the 10 paid sick days workers deserve?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government always puts workers first, and our government absolutely believes in the importance of unions in defending workers and in ensuring a productive and effective economy. That is why our government, for the first time in Canadian history, will ensure that all Canadian workers have the right to 10 paid sick days. It's the right thing to do, and we're going to do it.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, we have asked many times for this government to confirm if they will disclose the evidence that justified the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Every single time, they have refused. If the government has the evidence to support their extraordinary actions, they should be pleased to take the opportunity to table it in this House today. Canadians are increasingly wondering whether this Liberal government even had the evidence at all. Can the Minister of Public Safety confirm whether the evidence exists? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the short answer is yes, the evidence exists. Where was my honourable colleague last January and February when businesses were shut, when people were laid off, when our borders were closed, when outside this chamber, Mr. Speaker, Ottawans were held hostage in their own homes? We debated those facts in this House. I remember my honourable colleague and I having an exchange during the debate of the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and it was only after police told us that they needed this special power to ensure that they could restore public safety. We're going to cooperate with the inquiry so that there's transparency so that we can make sure that this never happens again.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
I guess I'll take that as a no, Mr. Speaker. Appointing a commissioner to lead the inquiry into the government's unprecedented use of the Emergencies Act must be a process that is completely transparent. Parliament was in no way consulted by this Liberal government on the appointment of Justice Rouleau. For an inquiry as important as this, Canadians deserve to know how and why the government determined that Justice Rouleau was the appropriate candidate. What was the process? What qualifications were required? How many candidates were considered? Will the government reveal this information, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague wants transparency. I would encourage him to bold, highlight, and underline the word public in the expression public inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Justice Rouleau has a plethora of experience in both trial law as well as appellate law. He's familiar with the principles of ensuring that there is a balance between cabinet confidences and making sure that he has the information that he needs to review so that we can be sure we got it right with regards to the Emergencies Act, Mr. Speaker, so that we can be sure that there are lessons taken away from this awful episode, and it would be nice to see the Conservatives appreciate just how severe this event was. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, when this government declared a state of emergency, at that time all of the blockades had already been removed by local police except here in Ottawa. It would be a lie to say that this emergency measure was necessary. Just like in other parts of the country, the blockades were easily removed by local forces, but to try to justify his actions, the Prime Minister decided to consult the provinces. But provincial premiers also did not feel that it was necessary to invoke the emergency legislation. So why consult the provinces if he never intended to listen to them? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, when the illegal blockades closed the borders, businesses, and caused employee layoffs, Canadians were the ones who paid the highest price. Only after hearing the opinion of police forces did we decide to invoke the Emergencies Act. It was necessary and it worked. We have launched an independent review with Justice Rouleau as Commissioner. We are looking forward to working with the investigation to promote transparency. Thank you. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that this Liberal government is being dishonest because ultimately the Rouleau Commission will investigate the police forces, but not the Liberal government. We already know what the results will be. The demonstrators are bad, the police is bad, but the Liberal government is perfect. Just like with the other scandals, this time the police forces are going to be thrown under the bus. Why? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, fact. During the blockades, there was a great deal of disruption to the economy. Fact. During the illegal blockades, there was a great deal of disruption to the borders. And fact, it was only after we received the opinion of police forces did we invoke the Emergencies Act. It was the right decision, and we will be collaborating with the Commissioner. Thank you.
Medicine Hat, Carson Warner.
Here's a fact, Speaker. This government's invocation of the Emergencies Act was a dark day in Canadian history. Legal experts and Canadians know that there is no need to invoke the Act, as Canada's existing laws are sufficient. This government has since shown that they have no intentions of providing any justification for stripping away Canadians' charter rights. They just simply want us to trust them. Really? We don't trust them. That's the issue. How can this government possibly believe that Canadians actually trust them?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, because on this side, we spoke to Canadians. We spoke to Canadians during the blockades, and their experiences were their businesses were shut down, workers were...
Order. I mean, we did make it to question number 14 without too much of an uproar. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I was saying before I was unfortunately interrupted by my colleagues, we spoke with Canadians during the illegal blockades. We spoke with the people that live outside of these chambers, who were held hostage, who couldn't go to work, whose families couldn't take their children to school, whose seniors couldn't get access to public transportation because of the illegal occupation. It was the police who laid charges, Mr. Speaker, independently because of those interruptions, and it was only after we received their advice that we invoked the Emergencies Act, and we had to.
The Honourable Member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister continues to dodge questions about basic facts of his train wreck of an illegal vacation and the subsequent RCMP investigation that followed. While he attempts to convince Canadians that this issue is solely in the past, it is clear that his skeletons do not remain far from the surface. Although this is not the Prime Minister's first rodeo when it comes to trickery, deception, and power wrangling, time and time again he tells Canadians to look away when he comes under fire. When will the Prime Minister get off his high horse and admit that he's not above the law?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what we're witnessing is in fact political theatre. You know, the Conservative Party virtually since 2015 has been so much focused, Mr. Speaker, on character assassination.
Hold on. Let's just hold on. Honour, member, just hold on a second. I just want to get, all right, calm down. I will let you start over. I'm going to let the member, as soon as we quiet down, I will get the member to start over. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the official opposition makes the point. You know, they're so much focused on character assassination and playing this game, and as much as they want to continue that fixation, I can assure members opposite, we as the government, and particularly the Prime Minister, will continue to focus our attention on what's happening in the real world, what Canadians are facing coast to coast to coast, and we will continue to deliver the types of policies, legislation, and budgetary measures that's going to make a difference in their lives.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, the sanctions against Russia were legitimate and necessary, but they are unfortunately also penalizing our businesses. Last week, my office organized a meeting with the Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade, as well as businesses that have become collateral victims of the sanctions. We met with businesses from various sectors, like agriculture, aluminum, and forestry. They were all suffering from the surcharges on Russian products and the end of contracts. Will this government announce a strategy to compensate businesses that have been affected by these sanctions? Mr. Speaker, I appreciate my colleague's question, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the effect of the sanctions on farmers and other businesses in Quebec. First of all, I would say that everyone we met with agreed in principle with the tariffs and the sanctions we imposed on Russia, because we all stand with Ukraine. Secondly, we will study the issue of the farms and fertilizers.
Security in Canada and global food security is one which we are very much concerned with. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, as we were saying, the sector that is most affected by the sanctions is agriculture. Quebec and Eastern Canada get their fertilizer from Russia, and today there is a 35% surcharge on that fertilizer. But our producers made their orders before the beginning of the Russian aggression. So that surcharge is not penalizing Russia, which was already paid for the fertilizer. It is only penalizing our agricultural producers. It is legitimate to impose this surcharge on imports since the beginning of the war, but will the government exempt agricultural producers for orders made before the war? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to assure my colleague that we take this situation very seriously. We are studying the options. We want to ensure that our farmers have the inputs they need in order to have a good season and in order to contribute to food security not only here but throughout the world. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, we need to act quickly. This is affecting the entire population. Fertilizer is going to cost 35% more for farmers. So what do you think that's going to do to the price of food? Currently, grocery prices are reaching a record level. People can't afford more. Now, the 35% surcharge stems from a well-intentioned but badly designed sanction against Russia, because this sanction is not having an impact on Russians, only on our farmers. Will this government support our producers before this surcharge leads to an increase in the price of food for everyone? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned earlier, we agree that we need to support our producers, our farmers. Secondly, we also agree in principle with the fact that we need to maintain tariffs on the Russian government Mr. Putin himself, and that we need to stand with the Ukrainian population.
Will make, Mr. Speaker, is that we are preoccupied with this issue. The Minister of Agriculture is working very hard on this issue to work with Canadian farmers to ensure that we are supporting food security in this country and around the world. Merci.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
This government continues to claim that a decrease in international trade necessitated the use of the Emergency Act. The Public Safety Minister testified that Canada lost $390 million a day in trade, and that the government had no choice but to invoke the Act because of the damage to the economy. Yet new data from Statistics Canada is showing that international trade at both the Ontario and Alberta U.S. borders increased in February compared to the same time last year. So, does the minister not understand basic economics, or is he covering up the truth? Which is it?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it's important for my colleague to draw a bright distinction between statistics and what were the real-life impacts at the time of the illegal blockades. Those impacts saw the disruption of trade and travel at the Ambassador Bridge, where we do fully a third of our trade with our most important partner in the United States of America, who, by the way, expressed serious concerns during the blockades, which was one of the other reasons, among many, why we had to invoke the Emergencies Act. It worked. We were able to restore public safety, and thankfully, trade and travel is going again.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, despite the blockades at the Ambassador Bridge in Coots being cleared before the invocation of the Emergencies Act, cross-border trade was up 16%. These figures raise obvious questions about the government's use of the Act, a decision the government justified by threats to economic security. They didn't do anything in 2020 during the rail blockades when economic activity stopped. Does the government only use the Emergencies Act for groups they deem racist, misogynists who oppose their heavy-handed COVID restrictions?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it is utterly astonishing to hear the Conservative Party continue to bury their heads in the sand as to the serious events that occurred during January and February. I would encourage my colleague and all members of the Conservative Party of Canada who don't want to believe that there was any interruption to speak to the small businesses on Huron Church Road in Windsor. Talk to the member for Windsor West. Talk to the member for Windsor-Tecumseh who've spoken with those businesses, Mr. Speaker. They were shut down. That was because of the illegal blockades. We're helping them. Trade and travel are going again. And thankfully, it was because we invoked the Emergencies Act.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Let me get this straight. Despite the police clearing the blockades without needing the Emergencies Act, yesterday the public safety minister stated the reasons were economic. He said the impacts were devastating. He said the Windsor crossing lost $390 million a day, and Stats Canada says that's not true. What should Canadians think when the government tells them they can't explain why they did what they did because of debunked news stories, invented economic data, and clinging to cabinet secrecy? What are they hiding?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the only thing that the Conservatives are clinging to right now is denial. And I have to say that before coming into this chamber and spouting off statistics in the abstract, I would encourage my colleague to speak with the Canadians outside of this chamber in Ottawa who could not leave their homes. I would encourage my honourable colleague to speak with the many small businesses, not only in Windsor, but in Coots, in White Rock, who were absolutely devastated by these illegal blockades, Mr. Speaker. It was only after we received advice from police that we invoked. It worked, and now we're going to make sure that we cooperate with these inquiries so that
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, on March 28th, Russian oligarch Igor Makarov, who has been sanctioned in the United States since 2018, was able to get $121 million out of Canada. That should have gone to Ukrainians fleeing violence. That should have gone to Ukraine to help rebuild. Instead, that money was used to prop up Russia's war. The NDP has been calling for sanctions since before the war started. The Liberals have done too little, and they have done it too slowly. When are they going to get their act together?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course,
course, we have done a lot as a government, and of course, we have to do more. We are using sanctions to put pressure on the Russian regime and to hold them accountable. 1,400 entities and individuals have been sanctioned up to now. We are now proposing new measures to go even further, not only to seize, but also to allow for the forfeiture of the assets of sanctioned individuals and entities. These measures will allow us to compensate victims and to support the reconstruction of Ukraine, and these changes make Canada a leader in the G7.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
How much? How much public money is enough for oil and gas companies already making mad profits? That's the question on the minds of Canadians. Reading about the CEO of Cenovus complaining that they need even more public money for carbon capture and storage. Never mind Canadians getting gouged at the pump while companies like Cenovus have profits sevenfold higher than this time last year. Never mind the billions that Liberals already gifted to them for unproven climate measures in the budget. They want more. But Canadians aren't buying it. So when are the Liberals going to stop greenwashing corporate handouts and get serious about actually reducing emissions?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I have good news for the member opposite, Mr. Speaker. Our emissions are going down in Canada, and the government's own emissions are going down by 25%. We've already reached a target that we had set for ourselves for 2025. And you know what, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker? Fossil fuel subsidies are also going down by more than $3 billion a year since 2018. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, lack of affordable rental housing is a major concern for my constituents in Vancouver Centre. In February, I joined the Minister of Housing, Diversity and Inclusion to announce federal funding to redevelop 157 units of permanent, affordable housing for seniors and persons with physical disabilities. Could the Minister tell us about the impact the National Housing Co-Investment Fund has on these vulnerable communities?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for her question, but also for her strong advocacy on affordable housing. And I was really pleased to join her in February to announce 157 new homes for seniors and persons with disabilities with an investment of over $44 million. This is the National Housing Strategy at work. But we're not stopping there, Mr. Speaker. Through Budget 2022, we're investing an additional $14.1 billion. We're not going to stop until we make sure that every single Canadian has a safe and affordable place to call home. Merci beaucoup.
Excellent. The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, millennials with good jobs just want out of their parents' basements, but the cost of living under this government is going through the roof. The budget's signature housing promise is a shiny new savings account. But who has $8,000 a year to save with out-of-control gas, grocery, and housing inflation? Could the Minister of Housing please enlighten us? Where will these millennials find $8,000 a year to save, or does he believe that young families can always do what the SpendDP Liberals do, which is just go borrow more money?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Speaker, the Honourable Member from Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola, should have a talk with the Member of Parliament from Mission Matsui Fraser Canyon, because that member believes that we should just download the costs of housing to provinces. His leader believes we should just download the costs to municipality. Yet his other colleague from Calgary Centre believes that we should not help first-time homebuyers, Mr. Speaker. They can't even come together to formulate a coherent policy about affordable housing. They oppose, this honourable member has been on record to oppose the ban on foreign buyers, which will give more opportunities for first-time homebuyers, Mr. Speaker.
Order, just order. Let's keep the chatter down just a little bit.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Royal Bank of Canada has indicated that those who are most hit by the inflation crisis in Canada right now are the poorest Canadians, because the cost of food is going up, housing, transport. And it's the poorest Canadians who have to pay the price. What the government must do to fight inflation is to control its spending, and they've never done that over 7 years. They also need to freeze all the tariffs and tax increases. That's something that they refused to do on April 1st. Why is the government continuing to directly attack the most vulnerable Canadians? The Honourable Vice Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we might think that the Conservatives are criticizing a fictional budget and not the budget that is in front of them. Maybe they should take note of what the former communications director of Stephen Harper said. And I quote, "It's prudent, in my opinion, it's reasonable, it's a budget for an economy that is doing well and which will almost reach a zero deficit in 5 years."
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Last night, I received a text from a local business owner. He said diesel fuel had jumped 24 cents in 2 days. That puts us at $2.18 a liter.
Shameful.
The average truck burns 400 to 500 liters. That's $1,000 per day. Our fuel truck costs $60,000 a month for 3 trucks. This has to stop before there is no one left to move our goods. Mr. Speaker, this government is a colossal disappointment.
Yes.
When will this government take ownership of their mistakes? For all the devastated Canadians, they need relief.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yet again, the Conservatives seem to be attacking a budget they invented and not the one we actually delivered. Maybe they should read the National Post, which described the budget as, quote, prudent and responsible. The Post went on to say, quote, the efforts to expand Canada's productive capacity and hold the line on spending are welcome, as are the new commitments to defence spending. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton and Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, price shocks on everyday items continue to hurt a growing number of Canadians, and it appears the worst is still yet to come. Inflation is almost 7%. We have price inflation and currency inflation happening at the same time. Interest rates are on the way up. People of all ages, especially those on the margins, are trimming expenses just to make ends meet. The dream of home ownership is moving farther and farther away from many, especially our youth. The policies of the left are shrinking any disposable income. When will the Prime Minister stop making one bad mistake after another and outline a clear commitment to control inflation?
Here, here. Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives when it comes to supporting the most vulnerable Canadians with the cost of living. It was our government that introduced the Canada Child Benefit, which is indexed for inflation and which has lifted almost 300,000 children out of poverty. Our government increased the GIS, also indexed to inflation, and which has helped over 900,000 seniors. When we formed government, Mr. Speaker, more than 5 million Canadians lived in poverty. Today, Mr. Speaker, that number is below 3.8.
The
Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, Service Canada has completely abandoned thousands of victims of fraud. Now imagine, these people lose their jobs, they request EI, months pass and they get nothing. So they ask questions, no answer. They call back, still no answers. And finally, they learn that they were victims of fraud, that no one informed them, and that no one knows why, and that nobody is going to send them their money. There are people who've been out of work since December who still haven't received a dime. We need to shed light on this, but first of all, will the government, at the very least, provide benefits to these victims of fraud? The Honourable Minister of Families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable colleague for this important question. We are aware that there is an increase in cases of fraud when it comes to the EI program. We are working with the members of the Bloc Québécois to make sure that everybody gets their EI benefits. We will continue to do that. It's important to make sure that every Canadian receives EI when they need it, and also to continue to fight fraud. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, it's not going fast enough. We're talking about thousands of people, just counting those who've complained to their Bloc Québécois MP. And there are probably many more because there are victims who don't even know that they are victims yet. Does the government realize how many people that represents? Thousands of people who've had no income for months. Service Canada is going to have to inform the victims of fraud. We're going to have to discover how this fraud was allowed to happen. But first, is there a way to get these people their EI benefits so that they can go get their groceries today? The Honourable Minister of Families. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for raising this important issue. We will continue to work with the members of the Bloc Québécois to continue to identify victims of fraud. This fraud is something that we are seeing is on the increase, and it's important for the Government of Canada to ensure that we will be able to address this fraud and fight it to make sure that there are not future victims of fraud. However, we are working with Service Canada, and we have made changes to make sure that people receive their benefits when they need them. Thank you.
Member for York Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, the Environment Commissioner's latest report confirms that the Liberals are all talk, no action on the environment. They talk about the importance of the carbon tax, but ignore the impact it's having on small businesses and First Nations. They talk about a just transition from oil and gas, but provide no support to Canadian energy workers who are losing their jobs. They fly across the country to talk about reducing emissions while missing all of their targets every year. Mr. Speaker, these reports are scathing. Why is the Liberal government failing to protect Canada's environment?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can certainly speak to this government's commitment on what many refer to as just transition. I always hesitate when I say that phrase because, frankly, a lot of workers don't like that phrase. And I can say one thing to this House, Mr. Speaker, and I said this to the unions over these past number of days. This government will not move without the full support of oil and gas workers in this country. They are the ones who will lower emissions. They are the ones who will build up renewables. We are committed to them in the same way that they have always been committed to the prosperity of this country. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, this minister is so far behind he thinks he's in first place. But these reports confirm that the Liberals are failing in every respect. Protecting the environment, fail. Respecting taxpayer dollars, fail. Supporting Canadian workers, fail. Standing up for small business and First Nations, fail. The minister may try and greenwash over these failures, but Canadians know better. After all, the Environment Commissioner says the Liberals' environmental plan is unrealistic and lacking credibility. Does the minister agree, yes or no?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The short answer is no. The long answer is the Commissioner says that carbon pricing is one of the most important measures to fight greenhouse gas emissions. That's exactly what we're doing. The Commissioner said that 8 out of 10 Canadians are getting more money through carbon pricing than without it, Mr. Speaker. The Commissioner said that the federal government would reach its 25% emission reduction target this year, not in 2025. Our plan is working. I'll agree that there's way more we need to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, the Environment Commissioner's report on carbon pricing states the government, quote, had not addressed the burden from carbon pricing faced by small businesses, unquote. There is no plan to get carbon tax money back to small businesses. I met this morning with Ward from Kelowna Lake Country, who owns an RV business, and much conversation was around various tax increases hitting the RV and camping industry. Will the minister admit their just transition plan is breaking the backs of small businesses and transitioning them to just hang on?
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Commissioner recognized in his report, 8 out of 10 Canadians are getting more money through carbon pricing than without it, Mr. Speaker. We are working with small businesses to ensure that the rest of the revenues are recycled. We already have an agreement with Ontario, and it's happening with the rest of provinces in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for London West.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the rights of the LGBTQ2 community are human rights, and we know that there is still work to do. For years, LGBTQ2S communities have been asking for a non-discriminatory blood donation policy. Today, Health Canada approved the request from the Canadian Blood Services. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister of Health please inform the House of this historic announcement and the impact that it will have for these communities? The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my colleague from London West for the question, for her incredible work for the LGBTQ2S community. Today, this is a great day for justice and for equality against discrimination. It's a day we've been waiting for a long time. Health Canada has accepted the request from Canadian Blood Services to eliminate the current 3-month exclusion period for all men who have had sexual relations with other men. And so there will now be just one questionnaire which will not be discriminatory and which will not talk about sexual orientation or gender identity. This is thanks to the incredible work of many people who have been fighting for this for years. Thank you.
Member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, over the past year, the Liberals have spent over $600,000 on social media influencers. While they say they want to crack down on misinformation online, they literally paid thousands of dollars to influencers to give fake, sponsored endorsements of this government. Why should Canadians trust the Liberals to regulate online activity when they've literally hired an army of keyboard warriors with taxpayer dollars to fight their fights?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The objective is very simple. We're going to ask online platforms to contribute to Canadian culture. We've heard the concerns that were raised about social media. We've gotten the message. We've fixed it. We're making it extremely clear, Mr. Speaker. Users will be in. Users and their content will never be regulated. Our bills will make platforms contribute to Canadian culture. That's it. It's written in black and white in the bill. Platforms are in. Users are out.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, Victoria and her 2 daughters moved from Ukraine to Saskatoon West. 2 months ago, they received their Canadian citizenship. One of the first things Victoria did was apply for a Canadian passport. However, between Passport Canada and the Saskatoon Service Canada office, all she got was hours queued up in lines and the runaround from staff. My office had to intervene directly with Ottawa as the local bureaucracy failed her. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister please explain to Victoria and all my constituents why the Service Canada office in Saskatoon has become the out-of-service Canada office?
Good question. Here. The Honourable Minister of Families.
First of all, I'd like to begin by welcoming Victoria and her family to Canada. I'm glad they found refuge here in what is a very awful situation that's happening in Ukraine. As I've explained to this House before, we're experiencing an unprecedented time when Canadians who have their passports had expired over the past 2 years because they weren't traveling are now wanting to travel. And because of these volumes, Service Canada and Passports Canada are working around the clock to try and serve Canadians as best as possible. We will continue to do everything we can to make this service available and seamless for Canadians, but there is an unprecedented volume at this moment.
The Honourable Member for Coast of Bay Central Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, folks from Port-aux-Basques to the tip of the Great Northern Peninsula are dismayed and worried. Plant workers and fishermen in towns like Port-au-Choix, Anchor Point, and Cook's Harbour just received the news of a 20% cut in 4-hour shrimp quota. After DFO stock surveys showed growth in the stock. Will the Minister keep with her new policy of leaving more fish in the water, or admit her mistake and reinstate last year's shrimp quota?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my mandate is to grow the fish and seafood industry, and for that we need stocks that are viable and abundant. So I'm focused on advancing consistent, sustainable, and collaborative fisheries to benefit rural, Indigenous, and coastal communities now and for future generations. Earlier this year, a full stock assessment was held, and yes, there's increase in area SFA. However, in SF5, there was a 12% biomass decrease, and SFA 6 continues to be in the critical zone. So we'll continue working with all harvesters, consultants.
The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every time I stand to speak in this House, I am struck by how privileged I am to be a Canadian citizen and represent the people of Scarborough Centre. I became a citizen in May of 2004, and it was one of my happiest days of my life. Unfortunately, many people faced delays in taking their oaths of citizenship when COVID-19 hit in March 2020. Can the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship update the House on the progress of citizenship ceremonies?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Scarborough Centre for her passion for Canadian citizenship and for her work on behalf of Mr. Speaker, since April of 2020, more than 240,000 applicants have become Canadian citizens through virtual oath ceremonies when we had to pivot our strategy after it became impossible to host large events with people together in a room. We're now hosting 350 virtual ceremonies each month, and each week approximately 5,800 applicants are invited to deliver their oath virtually. I'm happy to announce that just last month we set an all-time record, welcoming more than 41,000 applicants to complete their journey towards Canadian citizenship. Moving forward, we're going to continue to explore more options. The honourable member began her...
The honourable member for Edmonton Griesbach.
The government is finally acting to change their discriminatory blood ban against gay men, men who have sex with men, and trans women. This is a crucial step in increasing the blood supply at a time of ongoing shortage, and it's a step towards the ending of a policy that reinforced homophobia and transphobia. But New Democrats share the concerns of activists that the government could still be leaving people out.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut the member off for a second. There was no translation, so I will allow him to restart. Je vais faire certain que c'est bien? All right. Again, we apologize. The honourable member for Edmonton Griesbach, please feel free to start again.
The government is finally acting to change their discriminatory blood ban against men who have sex with other men and gay men and trans women. This is a crucial step in increasing the blood supply at a time of ongoing shortage, and it's a step towards ending a policy that reinforced homophobia and transphobia. But New Democrats share the concerns of activists that the government could still be leaving people out. Will the government commit to working with the 2S LGBTQI community to end arbitrary exclusions still contained in the new policy?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm so pleased to be able to hear our colleagues speak about this great day that we're having today, removing discrimination in this particular matter. And as our colleague said, we're so grateful to the activists as well as to the scientists for having worked so hard over the last few years to get to that outcome. And we look forward, Mr. Speaker, to working more together to make sure that Canada is a country in which we can live safely, in dignity, and without discrimination.
The honourable member for Spadina Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents have been contacting me on the severe delays in processing immigration applications and the pause placed on the express entry draws. People have had to put their lives and careers on hold, living in IRCC purgatory, all while Canadian businesses are facing a labor shortage. Mr. Speaker, IRCC is a total farce, along with the quagmire at passport offices and the mess in obtaining social insurance cards. All are colossal failures. Does the government have any viable plan to get this Service Canada back to Service Canada anytime soon?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, over the last number of months, we've taken a number of steps to boost the processing capacity of IRCC, with $85 million announced in the fall economic statement. We've made an additional $385 million towards processing in the recent federal budget. We're launching a modernization of the digital platform to boost processing time further and creating more immigration level space. The result of these investments has actually seen the numbers in the express entry system under the federal high-skilled streams decrease from 112,000 down to 48,000. The draws for the Canadian Experience class and the federal skilled worker stream will resume in this July, and we will be back to the service standard we enjoyed before COVID-19 was something we ever heard of.
And that's all the time for question period today. So following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in commemoration of the Holocaust. I now invite honourable members to please rise. Merci beaucoup. And I guess it's time for the Thursday question. The Honourable House Leader for the official opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's great to be back after a couple of weeks back in the riding. We've got a busy time coming up, the legislative agenda. I'm sure that the NDP is already aware, but for the sake of my colleagues in the bloc and ourselves, would the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader please advise the House what the business will be over the next week?
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon and tomorrow we will deal with Bill C8, the Economic and Fiscal Update. On Monday, we will resume debate on the Government Business Number 11 concerning the extension of sitting of hours and commence third reading debate on Bill C8. It is also our intention to begin consideration at second reading of the budget bill on Tuesday and continue with this debate on Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Orders of the day.
Ordre émanant du gouvernement.
Government orders.
Motion number 8 concerning certain provisions of the budget.
Ms. Freeland, seconded by Ms. Petitpas-Taylor, moves that a Ways and Means motion to introduce an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 7, 2022, and other measures